Welcome, everybody. Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today is my 650th podcast. So quite you're really honoured, Matt, to come on. Anyway, today we've got Matt Mishak, and we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Matt's a lawyer, and before anybody starts shouting, they're all going to be laid off. Matt's got some really interesting take on the world. So we're going to be talking about deskilling and upskilling with AI, what it means and where you need to be. Matt, before we get into it, where can people find you?
My website is LegalTek, LegalTek.ai. And they can find me on LinkedIn at Matt Mishak, and it's right there, Mishak.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Just give us a really quick background, because you're a lawyer. You've been in practice for a good few years, but you've seen AI coming, haven't you? So you're actually getting prepared for this new AI world.
Yeah. First, congratulations on your 650th podcast. That's a huge achievement. Yes. So I've always been sort of a techie, if you will. I was building drones before you can buy them, but I'm a lawyer too. In 2023, I went to an event in New York called Legal Week, and there was an attorney there who had said that those who embrace this technology will be very, very far ahead very quickly and very, very hard to catch. So I just couldn't get that statement out of my mind. So, at the time when I went to that, the ChatGPT 3.5 had made its debut on November 30th of 2022. Passed the New York State bar in the lower 10%. In March of 23, my plane had barely touched down from coming back from New York. ChatGPT 4 had passed the New York State bar in the top 10%, and it did it in 6 minutes. It's a 12-hour exam. So I knew it was big, and I started learning about it at that time, and really the journey started there, and it hasn't stopped. It's like drinking from the fire hose, but I have been keeping up with it and learning about its implications.
Because you've got for people that don't know, if you go to LegalTek.ai, Matt actually has a blog there, and he wrote a blog back in January 2026 about deskilling and upskilling, and the summary at the top was: an unprecedented wave of AI adoption is sweeping through the economy, and the legal field is no exception. Anthropic's Economic Index, a data analysis of millions of interactions with its AI model Claude, reveals that AI is changing how people work rather than simply replacing them. Instead of a job apocalypse, we see AI mostly helping people do their jobs by taking over certain tasks and augmenting human effort. So where do you see that impacting things right now, Matt? Because before we came live, you said, well, lawyers are still going to be in work because we've got to stand in court. So where do you see that? Where do you see AI impacting the likes of lawyers and accountants and people like that?
Yes. Mustafa Suleyman, who's the head of Microsoft, he's the CEO of Microsoft AI, had recently been interviewed, and he talked about this concept of artificial general intelligence and AGI. And really what that is an AI that is of Nobel laureate level in any discipline, medicine, law, any of that. What Suleyman, who's also the author of The Coming Wave, one of the first books that I read on AI, and I think a good read for anybody, he had talked about professional level AGI. So maybe not Nobel laureate. He described a professional level AGI as a level of AGI for any professional, whether you're a accountant, lawyer, project manager, marketer, that is coming very, very quickly. It's an exponential path. And he said that if you do those jobs on a computer, that's coming in 12 to 18 months, if you can imagine that. Now, a lot of people may not believe that, but we are in a new era of exponential cognition, that we've really been linear up to this point, but things are changing very, very quickly, and there's good reason for that.
So explain to us what you mean by exponential, because my understanding is that humans tend to think linearly, but explain to me what exponential is.
Yes, I think it's only natural for humans to think linearly because that's all we've ever known. That's all our ancestors have ever known. So if you look, I always look at the the XY chart where you basically have time on the X and Y technological advancement. Well, for all of human history and before history, it really has been controlled by really the most amazing thing in the universe, the human mind. And what has happened is that it's been a little bit of S curve for the fire in the printing press and the cotton gin and the automobile and the internet, but really that C1, the human mind, has controlled everything. Well, we're at a critical juncture now because what is happening is cognition has always been inside the skull. It's going into it's basically carbon to silicon, right? It's going into silicon. So what does that mean? Well, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it. If I take 30 steps linearly, I get 30 steps. If I take them exponentially, I get to 1 billion. There's actually a good story about that.
Tell us.
The lily pond. Okay. So futurist Ray Kurzweil, who is very interesting on the subject, he's made a whole bunch of predictions that he's worth listening to, where things are going. But he talked about this concept of us being locked into the linear way of thinking. He gives an example of the lily pond. So the story goes that the lily pond, the farmer wants to go on a trip, but he has a pond. There's fish in the pond. He doesn't want the lilies to grow over the pond because the fish will be starved of oxygen and will die. So he's watching the pond. On day 1, there's 1 lily. Day 2, there's 2 lilies. Day 3, there's 4 lilies, 8 lilies. It's doubling every day, taking over a little section of the pond. He's not really worried. He goes on his vacation. What we know is it doubles every day. On day 29, half of the pond is full. So if it doubles every day, how full is it on day 30? It's completely full. So it took 29 days to fill half the pond, and then 1 day it completes the pond. You may be wondering how many ponds are full on day 60. 17.6 billion ponds are full on day 60. So here's the deceiving thing about exponentials. They start slow. They almost look like a flat line, but then they sneak up on you very quickly. So what people talk about is that we're on this linear diagonal line, and we are here looking down saying, well, it looks like business as usual. But what we don't see behind us is this day 29. And that's why things are going to, move pretty quickly. And we need to be strategic about it. And that's where upskilling and deskilling conversation really comes in.
You also talk about the risk of professionals delegating their thinking to a black box. At what point does an attorney stop being a practitioner and simply become a glorified editor for an LLM?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. In fact, Sam Altman recently was talking about, this concept of where, at what point does it become negligent not to do what the AI says? And the black box concept is really that you get results, you don't really know what the source of those results are, how it's figuring all that out. And there's actually an interesting example where a criminal defendant had been being sentenced. And in that context, there had been a proprietary computer program that assessed his likelihood to reoffend. But being proprietary, we couldn't analyze what the black box was thinking about him, how it was reaching the conclusion. So it's very important to be able to understand that. The black box might have got it wrong, but how do we analyze that? How does a computer analyze it? I think it's always very important to have a human in the loop. There should be an auditing of how that human being is auditing that information, what they checked in the context of law, that if a lawyer was generating some type of motion or brief or filing, and it suggested that case law supported the position, that lawyer should have to sign off that they've read those cases, understand that holding.
So you've done a lot of work around legal tech, and the whole point of that is to drive efficiency. Do you think that AI ultimately forces the legal profession to commit financial suicide by making the billable hour obsolete? And how do you pivot a firm's business model when the work takes minutes instead of days?
Yeah, as far as the billable hour, I mean, I don't know if it's, obvious suicide. I mean, if you really analyze the billable hour, and I read a book called by Jonathan Stark, who says hourly billing is nuts. And when you start thinking about it, he convinced me on the first couple pages that one, why do we bill by the hour? I guess somebody wants a service done. Okay, well, I guess we'll start doing something. So we start, billing by the hour. What it does is really, you don't really think about what the overall goal is. Hourly billing is not the best thing for attorneys. It often leads to conflict with the client. Uncertainty when you have legal problems is never a good dynamic. And uncertainty of how much my attorney is going to cost me the following month, for example, never gives you any good comfort with that. Finally, the thing that's really terrible about the billing hour is a disincentive for innovation and efficiency, because even though you may want to be efficient for your clients, that you're shooting yourself in the foot because you have all this hourly work here, right? So I think what needs to happen in the legal industry is that we need to get rid of the billable hour. There's been lots of talk about it. Attorney Richard Susskind, who's an Oxford professor, had talked about where we are with professions. And professions are really highly trained individuals that are there to solve very difficult human problems. And there's a supply and demand problem there, right? That there's not enough professionals to go around. A 2022 study indicated that about 92% of low-income legal needs go unserved, and about 55% of those substantially affect the people involved. And Suskind's point was that legal problems don't exist to give lawyers jobs any more than ill health exists to give doctors jobs. Of course, when you get a breakthrough in medicine, everyone worries how it's going to affect the patient. Strangely, when we get a breakthrough in AI and applications of legal environment, everyone's worried about how it's going to affect the attorney. What I think is in the area of upskilling and deskilling is that the AI layer will allow professionals to serve more individuals. In other words, help individuals help themselves with systems. So we can systematize our professional knowledge and make that more widely available and sort of guide that process. So if you look at a lawyer, the lawyer is sort of on the top end of that. And if you're unfamiliar, AI is the layer here. Deskilling means that you're probably doing like the lower level skills and the AI is doing the higher stuff. This is the danger zone for not having a job anymore.
Yep.
If you upskill, and in my law firm, we actually have a pledge, no job left to AI. And what it involves is strategic thinking thinking about hiring. Paralegals may supervise systems. Paralegals may, a lot of people think paralegals' highest and best use is to generate legal documents under the supervision of an attorney. Really, the best, highest use, I think, for paralegal is that human-to-human contact, that empathy, that knowing about the system when the lawyer's in the courtroom, to kind of keep the client comfortable and knowing that we're, the law firm's dotting the I's and crossing the T's. It's this type of thinking that I think needs to happen. And I don't think that the jobs are going away. I think that they are changing. We need to be strategic about that. And we also need to understand this is happening faster than anything. The Industrial Revolution, agricultural revolution, it's coming fast. We don't have that much adjustment time. And the world needs lawyers. When people have big problems, they go to lawyers. Lawyers need to embrace the technology. We are Luddites. We don't really experience the upside of risk. We're very hyper aware of risk. And I think lawyers need to understand and accept the risk of not embracing this technology is worse than the counter.
So there's also the situation where, if you think about how you learned your job as a lawyer, you generally came in and you were given you have a training ground. So if AI is going to, is it that AI is going to replace that training ground, which means you're not going to have new lawyers coming through to basically do the high level piece that you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about, I think Amadei from Claude Anthropic had talked about that there's going to be the demand for entry level white collar profession is going to go way down because AI will do the tasks that those entry level white collar workers would normally do. I think it's the wrong way to think about it. I think that instead of the senior level attorneys simply offloading all of their entry level work on the AI, I think they need to redefine those entry level jobs and begin teaching how they're interacting with the AI, how they are doing those things. What is the secret formula for creating a brief more quickly or an initial contract more quickly? What's the secret sauce? This is developing that. What does the AI need? Does it need a court caption? Does it need a section of law? Does it need the voice of the client in that? I think of it, Tim, like cooking. That what is happening is that instead of just putting it on the sous chef or whatever, that you're teaching the white collar workers, the entry level white collar workers, how you make the soup, and that's what they're learning. So that's how I think it's going to happen. If they know how to do this, then you could simply tell them and they could do the methodology. It doesn't have to be the partner interacting with the AI.
So you've talked about the fact that we need to be working above the algorithm. So we need to basically upskill. You talked about the fact that there will be a reduction in number of people coming through, but we can still do that. And you've talked about the fact that we're going to be using this exponential curve. So what happens on day 29? What's the future? Where are we? Where is this going to take us? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of buffer in this sort of economic diffusion layer that people will be slow to adopt the technology. Mm-hmm. I recently returned from CES, Consumer Electronics Show. You'd think there'd be like the top 2% of technologically knowledgeable people out there, but I found that really people are kind of sleeping on what's coming and how fast it's coming. Kind of like Honda Asimo robot that was promised in 2000 that's going to be in every household. That never happened. So people are still kind of thinking in that regard, but it's going pretty fast. But your question was about the exponential and what happens in the future. I think that what we need to do is start thinking ahead of how we're going to redefine these jobs. I think that I would encourage everyone to begin learning some type of application to begin to plug in. Mustafa Suleyman talks about how important participation is, not only for avoiding bias by having minority interests represented in AI training models and so forth, but everyone definitely needs to know someone that they can call and kind of understand a little bit more about artificial intelligence. So I know it can be like drinking from the fire hose, but I would encourage everybody to learn about how you shut off training and that you don't share sensitive data, and that you learn to do one skill set. So a good way to do that is to take your pain point, whatever your pain point is at work, and see if you can put that into an AI to give you an advantage with that. This is not the days where you have to speak computer. The computer speaks human now. So all you need to do is be precise in your communication and articulate. Look up a little bit of prompt engineering, for example, that you have the AI assume a role in a specific task. These aren't difficult concepts. They're what you would tell a junior associate, or they would tell a subordinate to do that thing. So it's not hard to get started. I think people are kind of overwhelmed, but just that little simple thing can get you moving. And it's not as hard as you think. Computers speak human.
Yeah, I agree. I first started doing it with it just, organize a holiday for me. We were going to Chile and Easter Island. So what do we do? And it was just really interesting interacting with it and it coming up with an itinerary.
Yeah, you actually reminded me. So here's a little trick that I'll just mention to you is that what I say is you put in your stupid human prompt because say, maybe you're not familiar with what you're doing. You just say, use the meta prompt method to improve my prompt. And then what it'll do is it'll take your prompt and then it'll read in there and it'll make it better, more structured. It'll use structured block formatting. it'll put that in there. So one thing I would say is write your prompt. Click on the first letter before it. Say, now improve my prompt using the meta prompt method. You can even say, you are a senior level prompt engineer. Please improve my prompt using the meta prompt method. Then it's actually a good way for you to teach you how to write better prompts. And the other thing is that, AI, you can brainstorm with it, right? It has a chat function. You can actually brainstorm new ideas. That's another good way to plug in.
Matt Mishak, thank you so much for coming on and talking about AI, especially in the world of law. You're clearly doing some really exciting things. And just because I know that you're a modest person, you want to go to the LegalTek, that's LegalTek.ai website and check out the blog. Matt's writing about some really great things there, and with anything to do with AI, we just have to absorb it, whether we agree with it or not. I think it's really important to read up and have an open mind. Matt, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can, as you said, LegalTek.ai, TEKLEGALTEK.ai. They can also find me on LinkedIn. I post regularly at Matt Mishak, MISHAK.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about upskilling and deskilling within AI.